Hello, BookTube. I have some mail for you on this beautiful, beautiful Wednesday. It's a stack of things, so I thought we'd get right to it. Starting off with one of these white air-pressed envelopes. Let's see what this is. What have we got here? Oh, it's the lovely finished copy of the book we've already seen. This comes out in February, I believe. Yes, the first week of February. This is by Robbie Arnott, and this is the Rain Heron. And that's what it's going to look like, that silver finishing around the edges there. This is just a lovely little handy-sized paperback for $16. The author was named by the Sydney Morning Herald as the best young Australian novelist, and he lives in Tasmania. And this thing, the new pub sheet comes covered in blurbs, covered in them. People who love this book. Oh. Okay, all right. The new pub sheet has nothing but blurbs, so I can't tell you anything about it. Let's see what the book says. Ren lives alone on the remote frontier of a country devastated by a coup d'état. High on the forested slopes, she survives by hunting, farming, trading, and forgetting the contours of what was once normal life. But her quiet stability is disrupted when an army unit led by a young female soldier comes to the mountains on government orders in search of a legendary creature called the Rain Heron, a mythical, dangerous, form-shifting bird with the ability to change the weather. Ren insists that the bird is simply a story, yet the soldier will not be deterred, forcing them to embark on a grueling quest. As Ren and the soldier hunt for the heron, their lives entwine, unravel, and ultimately erupt, forcing both women to confront their biggest fears and their biggest regrets. Is this Robbie Arnott's debut as a novel? I mean, obviously he's written stories because he's got blurbs everywhere, but I don't think so. Well, one way or another, I should know more about this than I do, and I don't because I haven't got to it yet. Even though it's a February release, and February's right around the corner. So I'm going to have to correct that. Let's see, what else have we got here? Let's do this one next. This one has funky packaging, funky postage. So maybe an overseas publisher. What have we got here? Oh, look at that. Okay, great. This is something I wasn't expecting to see. Oh, it's well made too. Very nice. This is The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas by Rick Harsh. A tiny number of you, a smaller number than should, will have seen this on the live stream of Noah at Everyone Who Reads It Must Converse. I believe he's where I saw this book. I believe this is where I first became intrigued by it, and I guess this was sent by the author. Fantastic. So let's see what we have here. We obviously don't have a pub sheet. Readers, don your thinking caps and hiking boots, for The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas is an epic journey through harsh terrain. Where at any moment language erodes into a mindscape of hoodoos and canyons, not unlike that geological fantasia, that palimpsest of usurpation, the American West. In an era when many writers concoct their trifles inside the cosseted lairs of academia, Rick Harsh is a refreshing counterexample, a chronicler of our nation's nightmares from his balcony overlooking the Adriatic. You hold in your hands a nuclear apparatus of a novel, operated by characters all too aware of what their future promise, like Roar, the tongue man of the Nimipu, a night-languaged Injun who befriends Hector Robital, a bear-mauled buckskin ancestor of Eddie Vegas. And that is from Scott Koffel, American poet and author of Toucans in the Attic. Had that to say about the book. What does the book have to say about itself? Okay, nothing. The inside flap. This is French flaps. A very nicely designed book. The inside flap has a long description / blurb by Klaus Hauser for Riverboat Books. Is that this? No, this is Corona Samizdat. Okay, well, what does he have to say? Rick Harsh taught me that for manifold for the manifold destiny of Eddie Vegas, he reached into a bag of tricks left in a closet in Brussels by forgotten literary masters, and as the punning title might suggest, he attempts no less and much more than to come to grips with what empire has wrought, and how over 2 centuries the United States rose to global economic mastery and nuclear proliferate madness. A serious tome, indeed, with serious purpose, to the delight of the reader. Harsh recognizes that seldom do tricks accomplish their purpose without humor. Thus he is able to render the story of Hugh Glass and the Grizzly with dark humor and quotidian accuracy, yielding what meaning of that story was absent from the film, even as the location has been moved 1,500 miles westward. Okay, so The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas is self-published, I assume. It has... sorry. The very first page of the book is the very first page of the book. No publication data whatsoever, and the last page of the book is the very last page of the manuscript. So, classic self-published. So I don't know when this came out, but I was intrigued about it when I was watching Noah's live stream. So I'll definitely read it, no matter when it came out. Then we have this flat thing, one of these flat brown envelopes that often bespeaks a large amount of asbestos. So we'll see if we can get through this without destroying all life as we know it. Okay, this is an advanced copy, an unbound galley, as advanced as it gets, where the publicist has pages, and they just go to the nearest copy shop, if such a thing exists in the middle of a pandemic. They go to a copy shop and just get it bound, so they have something to send you. And this is Paper Trails, the U.S. Post and State Power in the American West by Cameron Blevins. This is new from Oxford. So, since this is so preliminary, I don't think it's going to have any kind of publicity material. So I don't know what I'm going to be able to tell you about this. The author's acknowledgments, the author's note on methods, and then, the beginning of the book. Well, let's see how it starts, so I don't have anything to tell you about it. I had forgotten where I left my overcoat, wrote Clark Thompson on January 20th, 1864. A regional supervisor for the federal government's Office of Indian Affairs, Thompson had been visiting the Yankton Indian Reservation in Dakota Territory on official business when he lost his coat. Unwilling to delay his trip, Thompson found a replacement and pressed on with his winter journey. When he eventually reached his office in St. Paul, Minnesota, he wrote a letter to one of his acquaintances back at the Yankton Reservation, telling him that his old coat was up for grabs. The entire letter was just 4 sentences long. There was no official business, no discussion of his trip, not even any complaints about the weather. It was just a few lines about an overcoat. Clark Thompson did not go on to alter the course of American history. Neither, presumably, did his overcoat. Clark's letter was utterly unremarkable, the historical equivalent of a 21st century text message. But it wasn't the 21st century. It was the dead of winter in 1864, in the midst of the U.S. Civil War, and on the outskirts of the nation. Despite this, Thompson was able to dash off a few lines about a misplaced overcoat, seemingly without a second thought. The significance of Thompson's letter has less to do with its contents than with the fact that he was able to send it at all. Roughly 400 miles separated Clark Thompson's office in St. Paul from the Yankton Reservation in Dakota Territory. Just 18 months earlier, this area had descended into all-out warfare. In the summer of 1862, Dakota fighters had launched an insurgency that plunged southwestern Minnesota into chaos. The U.S. Army quickly dispatched troops to the area to pursue them, and in December of 1862, troops hanged 38 men in the town of Mankato in what remains the largest mass execution in American history. The following summer, Minnesota's adjunct governor organized volunteer squads to hunt down Dakota men, promising a $25 bounty for every scalp they brought to his office. The recently created federal territory was home to just a few thousand white Americans, most of whom clustered in its southeastern corner along the Missouri River. Thompson's letter would have traversed this string of settlements before disembarking at the second-to-last stop on the stage line at the Yankton Indian Reservation. Any farther west, and Thompson's letter would have crossed into an ocean of grassland controlled by the Lakota and Northern Cheyenne that unfurled across Dakota Territory and into present-day Wyoming and Montana. How was a government official able to send an utterly inconsequential letter hundreds of miles through occupied territory in the middle of winter and at the height of the Civil War? Clark Thompson's letter was made possible by a network of post offices and mail routes that linked St. Paul, Minnesota to a remote government outpost in Dakota Territory. Like Thompson's letter, this network is easy to overlook. And like Thompson's letter, it shouldn't be taken for granted. The infrastructure of the U.S. Post is what allowed a half-page message about a misplaced overcoat to make its way to the very edge of the nation. Now that is how this book, Paper Trails, by Cameron Blevins, that's how Paper Trails begins. Tell me you wouldn't keep reading. You would keep reading. It's about the post office. Obviously, I don't quite remember. I must have had a conversation about this with the publicist or maybe the author. But it obviously deals with the formative role that the U.S. Postal Service, that postal delivery, that postal routes and telegram lines and whatnot played in the foundation of the United States in the 19th century. So, and that's an interesting subject, but it wouldn't do the author any bit of good, no matter how interesting it was, if it wasn't done well. That was done well. So that's great. I'll have to look it up and see how far ahead it is, but I look forward to reading it. And then we have these last two. This first one is a tiny package, and it's got something slopping around inside it. So I suspect that something inside it is a mass market paperback. So maybe a romance. It's been a while since I got a mass market romance. That would be nice. No. Rule number 1 has been broken again. This is a beautiful, beautiful Wednesday, so I'm not going to get upset. But rule number 1 has been broken again. One of you has sent me a present. I swear, the amount of attention that some people are paying. I know I must have mentioned this. Otherwise, this is the most egregious shot in the dark. I have said many times on this channel, let me repeat, don't send me a book. Don't do it. You may think you have the luck of the gods on your side, but you will almost certainly be sending me something that I don't want, or that I already have. And I must have mentioned that I don't have this, because now I do. One of you went to the bother of sending me a mass market paperback. That is so nice. That is just so nice. This is Thomas Wolfe's great debut novel, Look Homeward, Angel, in a very particular old Bantam paperback of a type I really like. I really like this Bantam paperback. I always have. I may have mentioned this in connection with, there was also a similar type of mass market paperback, maybe from Bantam, of Dr. Zhivago. I may have mentioned at the same time that I was saying that I love this book, how simple it is, how simple the design here. There is our main character. And also that it just says the great American novel. It just says that on the cover. I might have described that. Okay. All right. This is a bullseye. But nevertheless, that makes me want to stress more than ever. Don't send me a book. Don't do it. This was very, very, very nice, but okay. This was very nice. That's fantastic. This is coming in this room. It's going to go right up on that shelf. May even get a bit of a reread. It's been a while since I read any Thomas Wolfe. Okay. All right, fantastic. And then we have a box, big heavy box. I think I know what this is. I think it's a care package from Penguin, which is great because it's been a while since I had one of those as well. What have we got here? This can't be. Lord Ganesha. Give me strength. Rule number 1 has been broken again. Twice in one video. 3 times if you count the manifold destiny of Eddie Vegas. This is elaborate. Who knows how much this cost one of you? This has just got to stop. This has just got to stop. Okay, let's let everything fall onto the floor. I did not arrange my ergonomics, so I'm going to have to disappear from camera if I'm going to do a Steve pyramid, because I'm going to have to grab everything again. Okay. All right. This is Raymond Brown. I don't have this. I do now. I didn't have this. This is his masterpiece, The Death of the Messiah, in 2 volumes. I cannot thank you enough, whoever you are. I don't know if there's a note. I'll have to look around. Everything in the world fell to the floor because I forgot to make a second platform here for stuff. This is a bullseye. This is his exhaustive 2-volume work on the death and resurrection of Jesus Christ. It's really, really good. He did a companion volume on the birth of Jesus Christ, but with the death of Jesus Christ, he has more of an exegetical problem in front of him, because St. Paul wasn't the only person to say that without the resurrection, our faith is in vain. All early Christians said that. That became the linchpin thing. And there's no getting around the fact that the accounts of the resurrection in the 4 Gospels vary enormously. And it's not just that they don't have all of the details right. Of course, there were no eyewitnesses. So in the Gospel, among the Gospel writers, the people who compiled the Gospels, no one saw Jesus. No one ever knew anything personally about his ministry, or whether or not there even was such a person. Whether or not the mythologization of 18 different people wasn't well underway by the time these Gospels were written. But it's not just that. It's not just that the Gospels don't agree. It's that they disagree in progressive ways. They disagree in ways that look like mythology taking form. It's pretty easy to tell the relative dates of the Gospels, which ones are earlier and which ones are later. And the further along you go, if you line up the 4 death narratives of the Gospels, if you line them up, they get more elaborate. They get more mythological. They get they sound more and more like a story that's been told and grown in the telling. Now, if you're someone like me who doesn't take any of this seriously as truth, then that makes perfect sense, right? That you're coming time to write a gospel of Jesus Christ, his ministry, his sayings, his doings, his miracles, all the ways that history interacts with his story. And you have a couple of oral sources, or maybe in a couple of sketchily written sources in front of you. You're going to elaborate on them. That stands to reason. You're going to add stories of your own. You're going to add sentiments of your own, precepts of your own, little scenes of your own. And when it comes time for the death story, well, you're certainly going to make that more memorable than the drab account that you're using. And so on and so forth. Each person is going to do that. If you're someone like me, that makes perfect sense. But Raymond Brown was a believer, and a cautious one, a careful one, someone who was very much in the Erasmian mold of someone who cared very much about the sources as literary material, the sources as historical material, was... he was also a heck of a nice guy. I briefly knew him when we both lived in Maryland. He took his researches seriously, but he also took them religiously, and digs into them really deeply in a way that the great exegetes of the Northern Renaissance would have loved, would absolutely have loved. They might have quibbled with the interpretation, but they would have loved the fact that he was respecting philology, they would have loved the fact that he was respecting the history and the sources. And it's a testament to the job that he did that the church also respected it. The church looked warily at a megawatt scholar looking so hard at these documents of birth and death. They looked warily at that for fear that the scholar was going to discover the sack was empty. And instead, they considered these works to be valuable. Officially, the church has I don't know if they still do, but they once upon a time had an index on which they could find a book officially valuable. In other words, safe for the faithful to read. I've always thought of that as slightly insulting, any index or consideration like that. And I wouldn't be alone in that. Plenty of church scholars have thought that over the centuries. That it's vaguely insulting for the church to say, well, yes, this author digs deep into the source material, but he does it in a safe way. Your faith is safe if you read this book. Your faith should be safe anyway. Okay, especially since Raymond Brown is necessarily forced in this book and in The Birth of the Messiah, to deal with errors, to deal with copying errors, with transcribing errors, with correcting errors. There are a couple of gospel writers who have a bee in their bonnet about correcting their predecessors, and sometimes make corresponding mistakes when doing so. You have to deal with all that, and you have to acknowledge it. You have to acknowledge all that, and all of that bespeaks human authorship, fallible human authorship. It's a tricky needle to thread, to acknowledge all of those things and study them for what they are and how we can learn from them, while also affirming the bedrock of the faith. That your very inquiry into those sources is not aimed at destroying or harming or destabilizing faith. And I don't have this. I didn't have this set. I have no idea. I know I haven't mentioned Raymond Brown on this channel. I know I haven't. Have I? I can't possibly have mentioned him on this channel. And yet one of you knew that I didn't have this. Or more likely, you took an enormous gamble. Who knows how much this cost? You took an enormous gamble that I didn't currently have this box set. Maybe you noticed 2 years ago that it wasn't in a library hall or a library tour, that I went through book by book, and you noticed that this wasn't there. Although noticing an absence in a library tour that big. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Talk about a reread. Yes, indeed. Okay, nevertheless, rule number 1 applies. Don't send me a book. Don't do it. Don't do it. No one's going to believe that after now. So let me see how much I can gather from the floor here. Everything fell onto the floor. But I don't want to be gone from the camera too long. Let's see here. Okay, this is going to be a fairly awkward Steve pile. First one is, one thing we'll put on the bottom is Cameron Blevins' book, Paper Trails, the U.S. Post and State Power in the American West. An extremely advanced copy, but boy, that reading was good. It was really well done. Then we have The Death of the Messiah by Raymond Brown. So that's going to be the basis of our pyramid here. Then we have The Manifold Destiny of Eddie Vegas by Rick Harsh, which I saw on... okay. I saw this on Noah's live stream and really liked what I saw. And then The Rain Heron by Robbie Arnott. And the last thing, I am not going to continue to chase after landslides here. The last thing is a little mass market paperback of Look Homeward Angel, which is a great American novel. Maybe not the great American novel, but in this mass market paperback. Fantastic. I don't have a copy of this in any form. I didn't until now. Because I had this paperback once upon a time and really, really liked it. Even though I'm sort of gravitating away from mass market paperbacks, I really, really liked this one. I had it. I read the book in this form, and then it disappeared, as books do. And every time I have seen some other version, hardcover or whatever, or there's an ugly mass market paperback that I wouldn't dream of having, or also the blasphemous revised edition from the early 2000s, I think, or something like that. Whenever I saw any of those, I just went, no, I know the version that I want. I want this one, and now I have it. Thanks to one of you. So we've learned 2 essential lessons in this beautiful, beautiful Wednesday mail haul. Essential lesson number 1: more important than the camera, more important than the lighting, more important than the chair I'm sitting on, more important than anything at all, even more important than Lord Ganesha, is a secondary platform for stuff, to take it off of that platform and then to put it back on that platform. I don't just need a chair and a table. I also need a secondary platform. Oh, the world ends. Oh, the world ends. I got 50 books in the mail today, and 100 times in the course of this video, all 50 books cascaded to the floor and had to be picked up. So, lesson number one, we need a platform. I need a platform, a secondary platform, in addition to the platform where I'm putting my Irish tuchus. I need a platform for stuff. That's lesson number one. And lesson number two is rule number one. Don't send me a book. We had 2 bullseyes in one video. Nevertheless, don't do it. Because sooner or later, this little roulette wheel you're all spinning is going to come up black, and you're going to have wasted time and money and your health in the middle of a pandemic by sending me something that I already have or that I don't want. Sooner or later, that's going to happen. We've had bullseyes, but that is no reason to ignore rule number one. There, okay, I got that off my chest. So I'm going to wrap this up and take my baby for a nice, beautiful Wednesday walk. A beautiful Wednesday walk. But I will be back. Thank you, BookTube.